Look, there's a lot of speculative cryptos that can get great returns. There's a lot of things that have, like you said, triple-digit APYs. But look back to Warren Buffett. Look back to basic portfolio theory, is that you have a small amount of your investments in high-risk stuff. You have the bulk of your investments in lower-risk stuff. So your money's there next year and the year after and the year after. So what we're going to talk about today, I think, is talking about some of those, like, the places you probably put more of your portfolio in that have great returns, but like you said, lower risk. And a lot of people don't even know this stuff exists in crypto because they're so used to, oh, the coin did this or these high yield pieces, but there's some exciting stuff happening. I think we're going to bounce next to this slide, which is you're going to explain better, but it really has this graph of risk versus reward, XY axis. What do we see happening here, and how do you explain this to people?
So this is not perfect because there are many components in DeFi and it's kind of general, stereotypical, but it's a good base to start with, I think. But generally speaking, if we look at risk rewards, or more specifically on the risk side, proof of stake and the crowd loans, which you talked about in the previous episode, which was awesome. I love the vibe we had there as well. It was so great. A lot of fun. The protocol and the proof of stake is probably the lowest risk amongst all ways to stake. And the reason behind that is even when some of the blockchains crashed, which we had with Solana, in the past months, you still get your returns. It's very unlikely, very, very, very unlikely. And unless the blockchain breaks, as you mentioned earlier, we'll talk about the risk later, but that's probably the lowest risk when it comes to earning an APY. And then obviously, then you have the AAA, protocols like we see here, Aave, we see Compound, and these are single coin staking pools. So it's just lending on DeFi. Right. So once again, quite low risk relative to other potential plays. So we had proof of stake first. We have single coin staking, lending second. And then we're starting to go and play with AMM pools, right? And automated market makers. And there's a little bit more risk, as you know, in permanent loss, because you're going to have to pair them up with a stable coin maybe and a non-stable, or you can choose and play around with that. But there's market risk and impermanent loss risk. And then the high risk are those where you're using multiple protocols. You're sending the LP tokens to another platform, to another strategy. And the more layering you have, the more risk you're taking. But of course, you can make triple-digit, quadruple-digit APY, but it doesn't sustain.
Yeah, and that's well said. And this is what SwissBorg does every day. I mean, you guys have a lot of money that you're moving around, so you understand deeply these protocols, the different risk levels. You offer them to your clients and your users. So you understand this quite well.
We had up to $2 billion of assets under management. So yeah, we do understand
$2 billion,
it quite well.
Right? Okay. Yeah, and this is some of the stuff we teach in the DeFi Academy, and we get our students to start looking at these things. I actually get all of my students to, well, first of all, earn yield on their crypto, usually through Aave on this very low risk. So they get a little yield on Ethereum just to understand how a protocol works. Then I actually get them to do a liquidity pool so they understand what it's like to maybe experience impermanent loss. And that's about as far as we try to push their brain power, but they start to see, okay, I can get maybe a little more return there, but there's risk and it also gets a little more complicated. I think what we're going to probably do is have you back to talk a bit more about the automated market making, because that'll be probably a separate episode. But it just, like you said, if you want to push out the risk appetite, you can get a little more rewards. But I think there's some amazing low-hanging fruit, as you would like to say, Alex, that we're going to cover today, where people will be like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I could get this maximum yield right now and not have to be subject to market movements. And basically, like you said, unless the blockchain breaks, that yield is going to continue to be paid to you over time. So it is a lower risk. And I'm glad you pointed out some of these risks, because there is counterparty risk out there. There is impermanent loss risks with some of these things. It's not always talked about.
It's not always talked about. And also the medium and higher risk also involve more effort. Because we always think about things in risk return, but we forget about all the effort, all the active work versus real passive work, right?
Yeah, and we'll see that today as Alex goes into the proof of staking. I mean, it's kind of a set it and forget it type of thing, whereas when you get the AMM pools, it does get really complicated. There's more risk, you have to manage it, you have to think about it. I always tell my students, I don't want you thinking about crypto 24/7. I want you worried about your business and your family life and your body and your mind. You shouldn't be thinking and stressed about crypto all the time. Otherwise, you're not really getting a return if you're spending 6 hours a day on it. So great point. And we're going to show a lot of these things. And I know you guys also allow plug and play stuff on SwissBorg to where you handle a lot of that. So, I want to talk about that too.